So recently there were some headlines making it seem like Intel is just starting to make GPUs or work on GPUs, but really there's a lot more going on to Intel's AI strategy, and I want to tell you about it. My name is Dylan Martin. I'm a senior editor at CRN, and I cover the semiconductor industry. And I've been following Intel since 2018, and so basically Intel has spent billions of dollars over the last 15 or so years to build accelerator chips to take on Nvidia's GPUs mainly and find a new way to profit beyond the CPUs that it makes. Unfortunately, most of those efforts failed to catch traction, but Intel CEO Lip Bhutan is determined to create a successful AI strategy that will allow it to gain a foothold in the AI accelerator chip market, where Nvidia has found great success and is become the most valuable company in the world as a result. So what is Intel doing with its AI strategy? Well, a big part of it revolves around data centers, because that's where most of the money and profits are being made. Intel, like AMD and Nvidia, is trying to move to an annual release cadence for GPUs. And, that will start later this year with a GPU that is codenamed Crescent Island. And on the data center side, Intel has moved to an annual release cadence for GPUs, and that will start with an energy-efficient GPU that is supposed to debut later this year. The company is also working on GPUs for rack-scale platforms, and if you've been following Nvidia or AMD, you know that this basically means entire server racks filled with compute trays with GPUs and CPUs inside, and they all work together to act as one giant computer when needed. And so Intel also wants to go in that direction, but that is a little further out than the energy efficient GPU coming out later this year, or at least debuting later this year. We've seen references to Intel potentially sampling this with customers by the end of the year. But anyhow, Intel is developing GPUs, and basically they see a need for what they're calling heterogeneous infrastructure. And this is actually, heterogeneous is a word that has been used by Intel executives over the last decade or so. It's basically this idea that a system requires different kinds of processors, whether they be CPUs or GPUs, to perform different kinds of workloads or even different aspects of workloads. And so Intel is seeing a need, within AI systems for even two types of GPUs. And so that's part of what they're doing. They're developing their own GPUs, but they're hoping that customers and partners will be interested in systems that may have GPUs from different vendors. So imagine an Nvidia GPU covering maybe the more compute intensive part of a workload. One reason why Intel is going this direction, developing GPUs, but also seeing a need for systems with GPUs from different vendors potentially, is AI agents. We hear about them all the time. We write about them all the time. And essentially what Nvidia and Intel are finding, and maybe even more companies are finding this, is that one GPU doesn't necessarily do the best job covering all aspects of AI agent computation. One part is called Prefill, and the other part is called Decode. Those are kind of like the two processes of what we call reasoning, which is kind of what allows AI agents to think. And so Intel is hoping to support what it's calling multi-vendor infrastructure, because they think, quote, openness is the disruptive approach in this ecosystem, especially when, Nvidia is the dominant player and most of the AI infrastructure in the world is powered by Nvidia, outside of, what we're seeing with Amazon Web Services and Google using their own homegrown AI chips increasingly. Intel is hoping to develop a software ecosystem where basically running on this kind of infrastructure will just require the use of an easy button. Basically, the software will be able to determine which part of the workload will need a CPU, a GPU that is optimized for providing the highest possible performance, a GPU that has the highest bandwidth possible, and basically do all of this without developers needing to worry about, these big coding changes. Intel has been working on GPUs for several years, but their strategy has changed. They started out with working on GPUs for PCs and also high performance computing clusters where, you know, we're seeing like simulations and scientific workloads. And at the same time, they acquired a company called Habana Labs, and Habana was making what we know as ASICs, application specific integrated circuits. That resulted in the Gaudi AI chips. And Intel really tried to make a big push with those, especially Gaudi 3, the third generation. But those really failed to catch traction. And Intel has admitted to not providing what the market needed at that time. And so now, what I don't know is that, to what extent is Intel using the Gaudi technologies it gained from Habana Labs and then developed over the last few years? That I don't know, but they have in the past said that they were merging their GPU roadmap with their Gaudi roadmap a couple of years ago. But what I do know is that they are basically doubling down on their GPU architecture, that they are, seeing quite a bit of success on the PC side, specifically with integrated graphics. They have made great gains in integrated GPU performance. So that's the GPU that comes with the CPU instead of a discrete part. And so they're hoping to kind of do what Nvidia is doing for the most part, which is, take a GPU architecture and then scale it to different devices and system types so that they can benefit from development of a single architecture and, specialize it for different use cases. This is still extremely early innings for Intel. They are pushing out what they call Arc Pro GPUs for AI workstations, and they're hoping to build an ecosystem from there so that basically whether you're at the PC level, workstation, or server, it's the same underlying architecture. And I believe that they're trying to get it to scale so that they can, see similar benefits that Nvidia has from, for the most part, using a similar architecture and a similar way of programming to that architecture. If you want to learn more about Intel's AI efforts, you can follow my reporting at crn.com. Thank you so much for your time. I will see you later.